Dear colleagues, thank you for your patience. S obzirom da je po programu...
Having in mind that we are out of agenda a little bit, that we have another panel according to program, and the tour of the assembly, we should continue in this last panel before we talk about conclusions and finishing remarks. We'll talk about introducing budget support under IPA 2, emphasizing the role of the Parliament in the national budget cycle and monitoring of reform results. And it is my pleasure to give the floor to Mrs. Terry Karvinen, Budget Support Coordinator, European Commission Directorate General for Neighbourhood and Enlargement Negotiations. You have the floor.
And thank you for the invitation to come and speak today, even though the audience has shrank from the morning. This is my first touch with the Parliament in the Western Balkans, or in the enlargement context, for that matter. I've actually only worked with the enlargement context for 2 years, so this is probably why we've not met before. I really appreciate this. The work that we've done before in the context of budget support with parliaments has been really interesting, and some of the most rewarding things that professionally that I've done. What I was going to do, I know that it's just this presentation in between. Before the weekend, so I'm trying my best to be short and still try and explain a little bit what budget support is about. It's not an instrument that can be well explained in 5 or 10 minutes, but I'll do my best, and then you can maybe pose some questions afterwards to see how we've done. What I was going to do is to talk a little bit about budget support in the context of Western Balkans and enlargement, and then explain the instrument and then why it is put that in the context of the Parliament. What happened here? While we've been doing budget support, the Commission has a wealth of experience. Can anybody explain to me what I did here? No. Yeah, because I even lost the mouse. So if anybody can, never mind. I'll talk without the slides if. So while the European Commission has a wealth of experience in doing budget support all around the world, in the context of IPA, this is a rather new instrument. In the earnest, we really started doing this under IPA 2. But budget support really speaks to the principles of IPA 2. If you look at the fundamentals first, sector approach, results orientation, these are really the principles of budget support too. We support sector reforms in the fundamental areas of public administration, and we only disperse. Pardon? I can't. Okay, you can continue. We only disperse. We only disperse against results. We've been doing budget support since 2014. Well, the first program was approved in 2014 in Albania. That was a program to support public financial management reform in Albania. In 2015, we approved 4 more programs, 2 more programs in Albania, 1 in Serbia, and 1 in Montenegro. And this year, we are planning another 5 programs. If they all get approved, that would bring the number of budget support operations under IPA 2 to 10, and the total amount close to 250 million. We overwhelmingly have been focusing on public administration reform and public financial management reform to start with. These are the areas where most programs look at, and then those countries that have done those reforms or have started those reforms have also started to do other kinds of budget support reforms. And now the tricky part, where I hope I'm not going to lose you, the definition of budget support. How does budget support operate? Budget support is financial transfer of funds by the external financial institution to the treasury of the beneficiary country once certain preconditions and targets that have been agreed have been met. Once the funds are in the treasury, they will be utilized in accordance with the national budgeting systems, accounting systems, procurement systems, implementation systems, auditing systems, evaluation systems. The financial control of the financial institution will stop when the funds are released. It's not to say that we're not interested at all of the finances. We'll be looking at the sector costing and the amounts allocated for the sector. We'll be interested about the audit report by the National Audit Institution, but we're not controlling the actual use of the funds to the cent. What we will be interested about is that the results that have been agreed beforehand are met. And what the logic behind then is. The logic is that there is a sector reform, a nationally owned sector reform around which the entire operation will be designed. By using the national systems, we put focus on how the national systems are able to use public funds, how efficiently they are able to use funds, and how well the national systems are able to deliver services for their citizens. And it's a really comprehensive. It sounds like a buzzword. It is an instrument that looks at the public administration really as a whole. There are 4 eligibility criteria for budget support, and here I really wish that I did have the help from the, but I don't. I did have the help of the presentation. So the 4 eligibility criteria I looked at the design phase and continuously during the course of implementation. The first eligibility criterion is the macroeconomic stability. So there needs to be certain assurance of macroeconomic fundamentals in the country. In certain situations where there are concerns, we still may, it is possible that we still go ahead. Usually these operations are one way or the other linked to other cooperation partners programs such as IMF programs. The second eligibility criterion is public financial management reform strategy. In the enlargement context, there needs to be a public financial management reform strategy. We are here.
Okay. There's no connection. I think something wrong with the connection. Sorry.
Okay. So, public financial management reform strategy. And while we're implementing annually, there needs to be evidence of progress in implementing the strategy. We use baseline assessments in this. I'm sure that you've heard of Sigma assessments. Yes? Sigma, maybe? PIFA assessments, public expenditure and financial accountability studies. Have you been involved at all? We use these as a baseline to establish in the beginning of the public budget support operations where things are, and then yes, good. So macroeconomic stability, public financial management reform strategy, and during the course of the implementation, there needs to be evidence of progress in implementing the PFM reform strategy. And budget transparency, that's the third eligibility criterion, which has been extracted from the PFM criterion. In the budget transparency, there is an entry criterion that the national budget needs to be timely published, but we'll also be looking at other documents available by the national authorities. Budget proposal, in-year reports, mid-year reports, end-year reports, state audit reports. So whether these reports are published, what kind of information they give for the audiences, are they helpful in understanding the situation? And then the sector policy. So this is where really then the meat of the program usually is. There needs to be a credible and relevant program to reform the particular sector where we operate. And what do we mean by relevant and credible? The relevance refers to identified needs. That there are analytical studies that demonstrate that where the gaps are in the sector, and how they are addressed in the context of the accession. And under the relevance, we look or the credibility, we look at a number of things such as the capacity, the coordination mechanisms, the monitoring and evaluation mechanisms. The cross-cutting issues. There are a number of issues under the relevance, and yes, there needs to be progress, annual progress, and I'd say that in the context of enlargement countries, this is where we are seeing already the first impact that we've been putting on focus on improving the monitoring and evaluation system so that the data collected and the reports provided would be providing more useful information for the stakeholders involved. So these are not reports that are supposed to be done for the Commission. These are reports that are supposed to be helpful for the national administration, for their decision-making, and for the stakeholders such as Parliament, of course, civil society, private sector, whoever is interested in things that are happening in this sector. And this is what it can look like. Budget support typically takes a long time to design because we do need to have a relevant and credible strategy, and not only the sector strategy, but also the PFM reform strategy. So if it is not, if there is no strategic framework yet in place, it typically takes a couple of years. There needs to be a whole consultation process. They cannot be strategies that are written by somebody in isolation. Typically, we already have, during the course of design, all kinds of other projects ongoing in the sector. They may be technical assistance to help design the strategy. They might be already technical assistance in certain areas that have been identified as weakness in terms of monitoring and evaluation frameworks, for example, or some technical aspects or coordination. There may be stakeholder programs ongoing at the same time, the civil society programs in particular. And then in year one, or in year zero, we would sign the contract. And this is a completely imaginatory exercise, but this is what it could look like. In year one, we pay the fixed trans. We call fixed trans a base trans because it's not actually linked to achievement of particular indicators. It is linked to meeting the 4 general eligibility criteria: macroeconomic stability, progress in implementing the sector strategy, progress in implementing the PFM reform strategy, and progress in budget transparency. And then year 2, we can have capacity building, or usually budget support is always accompanied by capacity building components too. So the traditional technical assistance, twinning, TIEX, would accompany a budget support operation. So once we analyze what the weaknesses in the administration of a particular sector is, we would accompany then the implementation of the budget support operation with the technical assistance to address those particular weaknesses. And then stakeholder programs, and here I'm saying stakeholder programs, not only CSO programs, but we do sometimes also have programs with parliaments to improve their involvement in the sectors where we operate. Variable trans would be then paid year 2. Variable trans is payable when the 4 eligibility criteria are met: macroeconomic stability, PFM reform program ongoing, budget transparency, and progress in implementation of the sector reform, and the variable trans targets that would have been agreed beforehand would have been met. So, for argument's sake, let's assume that the program has 5 variable trans indicators set for year 2. We would look how well those have been achieved, and where the target has been met, the funding would be released. But first, always the general eligibility criteria are met, and then we look at the indicators, and then I think. And then in year 3, we would pay the second variable trans. And this is now an imaginatory scenario, but this is how it could work. So for argument's sake, let's say that we have a 30 million euro program. We would pay during the first year the fixed trans, second year fixed trans, which would be maybe 10 million. Year 2, the variable trans, depending on the achievement of the targets, and year 3 again depending on the achievement of the targets. And all along, we would also be having technical assistance programs and programs that would encourage the involvement of other stakeholders, such as CSOs. And Winet Parliaments, we don't have one in the enlargement context yet, but maybe in the near future. For any budget support operation, these are the stakeholders. No budget support operation happens without an active involvement from the Ministry of Finance. They are usually the guardians of the PFM reform strategy, even though PFM, Public Financial Management Reform Strategy, also involves other stakeholders such as the State Audit Institution or the Parliament. And then we have the line ministry, who is implementing the actual sector strategy that we are supporting, its departments and agencies, the civil society organizations in the area of that particular sector, and civil society organizations in the area of public financial management. Parliament should be always one way or the other. They are involved because of their involvement in the budget system. And academia I put in separately there because I was making a point earlier today in another meeting that I find that we don't yet use the full capacity of the universities and think tanks in our operations. And I hope that already this starts to resonate, that the Parliament does have a role in all this, of course, in the budget, in the whole budget cycle, from the definition of the budget to implementation and into the oversight of the budget. Of course, in the area of PFM and budget transparency, the 2 key general eligibility criteria, the Parliament has a big role. but also the legislative responsibilities under a lot of the reforms that we're supporting. One of the first steps is that the legislation needs to change before the actual change, the transformation in how public services are delivered is changed. We have not, in the enlargement context, this is very, as I said, the instrument is very new still here, but in other contexts, the first entry point for parliaments and the cooperation with the parliaments and the budget support operations is usually through the budget cycle. We have provided support for finance committees, budget office, organizing budget hearings at the budget preparation phase, and then at the time of the budget debate and approval, helped to build the capacity of the parliaments to meaningfully participate and debate. Relations with other actors, the relationship between CSOs and the parliaments in the budget process are one aspect that we've been supporting. It can be, for example, the expertise that is required from the civil society organizations, or maybe just to involve them in joint inquiries. And then, very importantly, the role of the Parliament in reviewing the audit report, the state audit report, and the accounts by the executive. So this is normally the first entry point for the parliaments. But increasingly, also, of course, we would like to see the Parliament's involvement in the policy oversight, in designing the policies and in the implementation and reviewing the progress reports. And I was disappointed that the Albania delegation is not here, or the people from the Albanian parliament, because the financial committee of the Albanian Parliament actually is part of the Public Financial Management Steering Committee, the Reform Steering Committee. So they are already involved in the process, at the very implementation process of the reform. I could be talking about budget support for quite. I did want to say. To leave on the positive note, I'm sure that the colleagues from the Court of Auditors could say the problems that we've been having with budget support too. And I have to say that this is an extremely complex instrument. It's comprehensive. It requires a lot of coordination between the different authorities in the public service. We just had this discussion with the Serbian authorities a couple of hours ago, how difficult it is to the whole coordination effort, and setting the targets right for the strategies, and starting to improve that. So by no means that I'm saying that this is a tool that will solve problems all the problems that we've had in the past, but I did want to say that there is evidence that budget support can deliver quite important benefits too. The evaluations of budget support, which have been done elsewhere in the world, do suggest that they have supported the operational efficiency, the better design and implementation of the policies. Certainly there has been a lot of work in terms of improving coordination, monitoring and evaluation systems, public financial management, and discussion on fight against corruption. In certain cases, it has been important also to increase the coverage of public services. I can, for example, give you an example of the refugee crisis in the Middle East, where one of our budget support operations helped to increase the fiscal space to increase the education coverage. The 120,000 refugee children could also have access to schooling in the camps. It is a complex tool, and I don't expect that this was answered all your questions. I hope you have more questions. I'm from the Commission side and been working with the Western Balkan context for 2 years, so I'm sure that I don't quite understand all the political questions that might arise around this tool, but I'll make my best to answer your questions.
Yes, are there anyone who'd like to ask a question?
You said that technical assistance is always accompanying the budget support as an instrument in all of the phases. When you say technical assistance, are you calculating that as part of the budget support, or is that different money that is that comes from IPA or whatever? Is that part of the agreed sum, or that is filled in from other sources?
It depends. We do usually budget technical assistance under that particular operation. So we would have a budget for the fixed tranches, variable tranches, and then separately for the technical assistance. However, we often also have technical assistance that precede the operation. If we wait until the signature of the financing agreement, we find that the technical assistance sometimes comes a little late in the process. So usually there might be already allocations before the previous year's allocations that would have been used for technical assistance, or they can even come from different sources. It depends really on the case, and it depends on the different kinds of instruments that are available for that particular sector. So, for example, we had public financial management program in another part of the world where some of the technical assistance came from a regional program that addressed problems with tax administration. So technical assistance from the tax administration actually came from the regional program. So it's just the whole coherence and how you best coordinate the different sources of funding and the different instruments, and try and not, of course, duplicate, but to make the best use of it. Sometimes it is not. It doesn't even come from the EU funds. It might be that other cooperation partners are involved, such as World Bank, can be involved in the sector, and then the support might actually be coming from there.
For the question, but I want to go further with this. With IPA 1, budget support was not used that much, because it was tied up, because of the lack of capacity, it was tied up with having the country had to have an arrangement with the IMF, for example, because the lack of capacity on the part of the Commission to deal with this. Now I see this is a different story altogether. The design is completely different. Am I right? So this is different? Or do we, again, have to have some kind of a arrangement with IMF?
No, the IMF is not an obligatory condition for any budget support operation, but in certain cases of macroeconomic concerns, we can use the IMF assistance, the IMF arrangements, to give us a certain guarantee that the macroeconomic situation won't jeopardize the budget support operation. Yeah. So that we can be sure that even if some of the risks that are there can be actually more addressed with the help of the IMF rather than from the funds for that particular sector reform. Mm-hmm. But it is not a precondition. Now, the enlargement budget support guidelines were only prepared in 2014. Before that, any operation, I think, would have been covered by the budget support guidelines for DevCo, for the DG DevCo countries. They are the same principles, the same 4 eligibility criteria, but in enlargement context, there are certain specificities, such as we only do sector budget support. So making it a little bit simpler, we do also have state-building contracts in the neighbourhood context, for example, where we address situations of fragility.
Okay, so we come to the role of the Parliament with these kind of conditions in place. I don't know in other countries. I would like to hear from my colleagues here, but in Macedonia, for example, IPA 2 did not come into Parliament at all. At the time, I was from the think tank community, and I was persisting that, the decision, the design of the sectors should go through the Parliament. But that did not happen, and the reason was because the European Commission believed that this is the role of the government, that the government should have the will to actually consult and go through this parliamentary thing. So if IPA 2 did not go into the Parliament, now all of a sudden this is a requirement. The Parliament is not equipped to deal with IPA 2 at all. I mean zero in the case of Macedonia. I don't know your parliaments. We really cannot deal with IPA. We don't understand just the normal things. And we also have you have the programs, I understand the building of capacity, but when will the capacity be built so that on a level that we can have meaningful discussions within the Parliament concerning the budget support and all the rest of the things? To me, it looks like wishful thinking, frankly. And on the other side, also, this is for the Macedonian Parliament, you said there have to be discussions of the state audit report. Now, this is something we don't do in the Macedonian Parliament. And you know why? Because our previous Prime Minister said that these discussions could be interpreted as the government is putting pressure on the State Audit Office, and for the benefit of independence of the organisation, we shouldn't discuss these in the Parliament. And we don't discuss them in the Parliament. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is if you're getting the Parliament involved at this stage without previous involvement, I don't know about the other countries, it will take a lot of time to build the capacity for you to be able to introduce such an instrument.
And indeed, any changes of this sort will not happen overnight. These are long-term changes in any country, and I'm talking at the very general level here. I'm not competent to actually analyze any specific country in this region in this respect. So I'm only talking in the general terms. Budget support does not have a precondition that the parliaments will there needs to be a parliament vetting. The budget support methodology encourages the involvement of all stakeholders, and sometimes it is a very gradual process. We do also. I was not referring to bringing the budget support programs into the Parliament. I was referring to the Parliament's role in the policy. So what we would like to see happening more and more, that the Parliament is more involved with the important policies in the country, and this is the link that I was trying to. This is the point that I was trying to make. Not to bring the budget support program into the Parliament, but bring in the policies into the Parliament. And the same thing with the audit report, that we really encourage that this process would take place.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to join the debate? Yes?
A question that might interest the audience, but of course be from the European Court of Auditors as well. You mentioned that 2016, 6 other sector reform contracts, if that's the way they are called, will be launched, will be signed. Could you tell us in which sectors, in which countries? And second question is about the use of budget support in areas that are actually those that will be financed by the structural funds if a candidate country becomes a member state. The thing is that the UN organizations and the donor community actually usually does not work through budget support. I see very much the point in areas where the importance of a long-term change and the involvement of all these stakeholders. So in the areas of the acquis, of the alignment towards EU policies, there I definitely see all your reasons, and I recognize that. But for me, I don't see the advantage of using budget support in areas like wastewater treatment or policies relating to agriculture, for instance. Maybe you could, well, contradict me or give your view on that. Thank you.
Well, we don't have, this is a new question for me because we actually don't have budget support operations in those sectors in enlargement context yet. They have been done in other parts of the world where cohesion funds obviously don't exist. But we have not come to that. 2016, we have been designing programs in public administration reform again. We are looking at I'm going blank. We're looking at education. Border management, a little bit related to migration, border management, rule of law related things. We're looking at fight against corruption and transport policies. And we have been designing a program also with Kosovo. So that would make 4 countries altogether have now been in the process of designing or approving budget support operations. So Albania, Serbia, Montenegro, and Kosovo. But as I said, the 2016 programs are not approved yet. They are in the design, still in the late stages of design. So I think it would be preempting to say that they are approved. That I cannot promise.
I suppose that's it. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question so that I don't omit anyone? Thank you for this presentation and for the patience, for the response. Thank you all for the patience. This has really been a very active day, and we started almost early this morning and worked full time. Thank you once again. And as it is usually the case when closing a conference, we need to give some conclusions and comments, and these will be draft conclusions that I believe we all agree on and we have all mentioned, and we will send you to all the participants the draft conclusions so that they can give us additional amendments, comments, and make the final conclusions. What was certainly mentioned for several times by majority of the speakers was how important it is for IPA funds to remain the priorities of the European Union, that funds for the budgetary period 2014 to 2020 have been increased, that we still need to improve administrative capacities at all levels of the public administration for the purpose of a high level of absorption of IPA funds. Also, that there is a great need to reform the infrastructure and energy sectors, that we need to support regional initiatives and regional projects. And that's something what this conference is used for. This is something we are all interested in, but we are here all parliamentarians, and all of these conclusions are focused on people. This is why we are here, to represent the people. So I would like to say that we have achieved a consensus altogether that we need more intensive interparliamentary cooperation, both at bilateral and multilateral level. We need to cooperate and meet more often, not just in conferences. We need to propose concrete topics, and this will be our tool for sending a message to those who will use IPA funds. And those are our citizens. Miss Terry Kervinen is an expert. Miss Anna was our expert. And we parliamentarians are not experts. We are people who should create conditions for our citizens, which we represent here, with the assistance of the experts. We need to create these conditions for our citizens to use the results and outcomes of these funds. And I believe this is the wider message that we should convey. This is at least one of the greatest impressions I've had after today. And we don't want to finish our cooperation with the conference. As a host, I will feel free to propose more joint meetings. We have already agreed on a joint meeting with our colleagues from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I believe that all of you who are here, we can establish the same kind of communication and dialogue, and through joint meetings and sessions, why not, joint committee sessions, we can perhaps convey some of the topics to our colleague MPs and encourage a kind of a debate. We are parliamentarians. We are here both from opposition and ruling parties, and the point that there is a variety of us gives us the right to help the executive, because it is harder for them to achieve the cooperation, but with the parliamentarians it is much easier, and the dialogue is always the right track. Perhaps this can help us remove the obstacles that exist. Thank you once again for your attention.